So let's look at back into chapter 1, kind of go through the rest of it. I think we can get through the rest of chapter 1. We talked last week a lot about, again, righteousness being needed. And Paul was writing, discussing, these are some of the things that can happen to you if you don't receive the righteousness of God. And one of the biggest points to make, and that Paul makes in verse 22, we'll just kind of maybe start there, says that these people, well, verse 21 says that they knew God, but they glorified him not as God, neither were they thankful, and they became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. And we see a lot of foolishness, in the picture that I keep putting up here. This is foolishness. I mean, this is people perverting the truth. They're trying to become their own God, basically, is what it's all about. They're like, I don't believe what God did was correct. He made a mistake in creating me this way. I'm really supposed to be this way, and I want to express myself as such. You got all kinds of craziness going on. We've got this one guy, I done forgot his name, but he's a government official. He was hired by the Biden cabinet or administration to be in charge of hazardous waste, which I thought was hilarious. They hired a non-binary person to be in charge of the hazardous waste for the nation. But the person, I don't even know, he is a guy, identifies as being
born as a guy?
He's born as a guy.
Oh, okay.
So he's a guy, I call it biologically like it is. He's a guy. He's bald, but he's got a full-blown beard, but he wears dresses all the time. And he's the guy that actually got caught stealing luggage at airports. He would just nab somebody's suitcase and take off with it and build up his wardrobe, basically. And he got a hold of somebody's suitcase that happened to be an international a fashion person who designed dresses and designed all this crazy attire. Well, he got her suitcase by accident, just randomly selected it, I guess, and started wearing her stuff out in public, having his picture made. Of course, that ended up all over Twitter and everywhere else. And she's like, that's my stuff. He stole my suitcase. Ended up proving that he was the one that had been stealing all these suitcases, and they sent him to jail for a while. But he's back out, and he's back in his position. He's still working for the government, even though he was proven to be guilty of stealing these suitcases. And anyway, it's foolishness. But we're seeing it being embraced and accepted all over the place. And these verses discuss, because we were asking the questions last week, why are they like this? What has happened? Well, this is what has happened. First of all, verse 23 says that they changed the glory and of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and four-footed beast, and creeping things. I see this verse kind of, I don't like the word to use the word evolving, but it's kind of evolving with the culture. I heard a guy preach years ago that this verse is speaking out against secular holidays, and that God being made into an image like corruptible man was talking about Santa Claus, and the birds was talking about Thanksgiving because of the turkeys. Four-footed beast was talking about the Easter bunny, and creeping things was talking about Halloween, which it kind of fits. But in this day and time, what do we see kids doing? They're identifying not only as the other gender or neither gender, but as furries. They're identifying as animals. I'm a cat. I'm a dog. And we were at, where were we at? Alabama. What's that place called?
I'm not sure.
The beach
Gulf
we went to.
Shores.
Gulf Shores. Yeah, we're at Gulf Shores helping Ron, Lori's dad, get moved back. and we saw a girl standing out on the beach with a tail coming out the back of her shirt.
Oh, wow.
And that's just common.
Well, they have those headbands. with
Yeah, they have the
ears
headbands
now.
with the ears now and all this sort of stuff. And they're identifying legitimately as animals. I'm just waiting for them to start coming out as hamburgers and hot dogs and french fries and all the rest of it. I mean, they're identifying as everything else, identifying as a notebook or, whatever. We used to, Joe, he used to crack us up. This is 4, 5, 6 years ago. He'd walk through the house and he'd go, "I'm a fire truck. When I grow up, I want to be a fire truck." And I'm sitting there looking around this day and time thinking that may not be too far off. Some of these kids may want to grow up to be a fire truck or a police car or a bulldozer or whatever. What was that you said you always wanted to identify as a attack helicopter or something?
Yeah.
Just being stupid. But that's the way our society is becoming. We're getting so far off the rails. Why is this happening? Was the question that kept popping up last week. Well, here's some of the answers. Wherefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness through their lust of their own hearts. So they have just come up with this stuff, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. They're changing. We'll see here in a minute.
Okay, I've got lost. What verse?
We're verse 24 right
Okay.
now. It says, "Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts." And then he goes on and adds, "to dishonor their own bodies between themselves."
But that's already happened.
Yeah, this passage seems to definitely be honed in on homosexuality. Seems to be the primary focus here. But we're seeing things going way beyond that by this point. And I was talking to Lori just this morning, and I'm like, when you look at everything that's going on in the world today, gay people are starting to seem normal
Yeah.
compared to what is happening and how far people are taking this, and it's getting really pathetic.
That was their agenda. That
Oh, absolutely.
Commercial and everything
It's
else.
always in front of our face,
Yeah.
so we.
Yeah, and we're about ready to see it all again because June is Pride Month every year, so we're going to start seeing that ramp up on the TV commercials and all this sort of stuff here in just a week or two. But this is the focus here, and you could even apply this to transgenderism. What are they doing to kids now? I mean, they're mutilating their bodies, going through transition surgeries to change the male organs to female organs, or to make them look as if they're female organs and vice versa, which of course aren't functioning. A biological boy will never be able to get pregnant. I don't care how many surgeries they have. It's just not going to happen. And a female's not going to ever have any amount of surgeries to get another female pregnant. It's just not going to happen. I put a video out of that nature back the day Biden signed that marriage act or whatever into place. Wasn't 30 seconds on TikTok and they pulled the video down. I thought it was just a glitch, so I posted it again. Within 30 seconds, they pulled it down a second time and flagged my account. They're like, "This is hate speech." Because I said that men can never become pregnant and women will never impregnate another woman. That's hate speech.
That's the truth.
It's the truth, exactly. I went on a rant for a week or two after that. But, I mean, truth is truth. But here's the problem. Verse 25 says, and this is what has happened, these people have changed the truth of God into a lie and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're worshiping themselves, saying, "I know better than God, and I'm going to change my physical characteristics to resemble what I feel like I am versus the way God made me." And I've had tons of conversations online with people. I'm like, "Do you really think God made a mistake?" And unanimously, most people are saying, "Yeah. He didn't know what he's doing. He's just making mistakes over and over and over again." Ben Shapiro says this a lot, and I believe it, that what we're seeing today is what he calls a social contagion. It was 30 years ago, you had trans people 30 years ago, but now, you're seeing an increase at an accelerated rate that's ridiculous. And you can't say that within the last 2 years, you go from less than 1% of the population to close to 40% of the population is identifying as LGBTQ plus and whatever they're adding on there. It's a social thing. People and the kids will tell you that. Oh, I was looking on TikTok and saw these videos of how all these people were coming out, and I'm like, well, that's why I'm so miserable. I must be trans. I must really be a boy, even though I was born a girl, and all this sort of stuff. And they're just buying into the social aspect of it. You know, Lori's got a kid in class who's wanting to be called a boy name instead of a girl name, wearing the cat ears and all that sort of stuff. She says she's not a furry, yet she always wears cat ears. Wants to be called a boy. Every time they say all the boys line up, she lines up with them. And this is in the 5th grade. You know, and Faith has seen stuff like this in the 3rd grade in her class. You know, Zachary's seen it at his school, in high school.
You know,
Joe has seen it in middle school. It's just all over the place now.
And it feels like parents are not being parents.
They're not.
Parenting your child to know what is
Exactly.
true.
There are
What is
parents
right.
out there who are afraid to
And they're-
raise their daughter as a female.
Right.
And so they're raising them. I have a granddaughter who was born with
Have you heard from Joy?
some problems.
Check on her.
And the doctor came in and we had to rush her to the Children's Hospital in Knoxville. But before we left, the doctor came in and my son-in-law said, is she a girl or is she a boy? I mean, you could tell personality the moment she came into this world.
Right.
We had a girly girl there.
Right.
I mean, but the doctor said, well, see if she likes to play with dolls
Right. It's
or
all
with
social
trucks, and there you got it. You either got a girl or a boy.
Yeah, now they're leaving, you know, that section on the birth certificate's blank or leaving it off, saying to be
Yeah.
determined later. Yeah, they're already changing all that stuff. I filled out stuff for our robotics registration, and I almost just quit filling out the form. I got so mad, but I didn't because there's a teacher standing beside me and I didn't want to make a scene. But under the sex, it has male, female, and non-binary. I'm like, for a robotics team, you know, for technical school stuff, we're seeing it all over the place.
Well, even in their case, the parents are afraid
Yeah.
to make that decision. But they make a decision, and then when the kid gets older, they feel like, did I make the right decision?
Right.
Things aren't looking like I did.
Well, and there's tons of people now, thousands at least, across the country who are going through detransitioning, which means that they did transition and realize, oops, this was dumb. And a lot of them trying to detransition have already had the surgeries that are irreversible.
I was just thinking,
And they
it
can't.
be reversed.
They can't be reversed, and they're stuck with. There's one guy, Matt Walsh. He works with Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. He put out a documentary called "What Is a Woman." It's hilarious. It's a serious one, but it's hilarious to watch it because of the way people are. But they interviewed you're straight. I think it's a woman. Yeah, it's a woman. No, it's a. I'm so confused on that. I think it's a woman who transitioned as a man, who's now transitioned back to being a woman, but she's got so many health issues that they go to the doctor every 6 months to have some kind of new procedure to correct something as a side result of whatever. Even that kid Jazz, who was a boy, they started transitioning him at the age of 10. So there's a TV show. It's been on TV for 10, 15 years now called I Am Jazz. And he recently was going to college. The mom was on there saying, they better make sure, or whoever, he better make sure, I guess she said, that they keep doing this procedure so that it doesn't seal up down there, because they did a surgery to get rid of the genitals, replace them with what looks like female, but it keeps trying to heal itself back together.
Well, of course.
Because the body knows I'm a boy, and they're like, what? Okay. I was thinking Joy was supposed to be here, but she's working. Anyway, the body's trying to heal itself and make it back to what it's supposed to be, and the parents are flipping out because they spent all this time and energy and money and all this sort of stuff. And they've simply done what this verse says. They have changed the truth of God into a lie and worshiped and served the creature themselves more than God who made them. And we're just seeing this ramp up more and more and more and more. So, this is what's happened. Verse 26. For this cause, we see this phrase used a lot in the Bible. For what cause? Because they've done all these things, and they've gone their own way, professing themselves to be wise, they became fool. They changed the truth of God into a lie. They worship themselves instead of God. For this cause, God has just gave them up to their vile affections. It's like, okay, this is the way you want to live your life, I'm going to let you do it. And he gave them up to their vile affections. And again, here, this is specifically talking about homosexuality. It says, for even the women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one towards another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, receiving in themselves the recompense of their error, which was meat. Which means they're receiving the recompense, or that which is appropriate for the actions that they are taking. And they're just ending up. But what's making me furious about this is it's now kids that are being affected. They're not old enough to make these decisions. And like y'all said, the parents aren't being parents anymore. Well, that 15 years, 20 years ago, I started seeing the kids are now telling the parents what to do.
Exactly.
And now the government is empowering the kids to make decisions for themselves. And it's getting to the point in places like California, if a kid wants to transition and the parents don't want them to, the government steps in, removes the kid from the home, puts them in foster care.
I've read that, yes.
And will put them with a LGBTQ plus family, and then they will support what they want to do and move forward with it anyway. I've seen court cases where one parent wanted to allow it, the other parent didn't. Well, 100% of the cases, it goes the direction of the LGBT side of things. It never goes the conservative route. It always goes in that direction. And it's just the devil at work. I mean, that's what's happening.
I get so angry when, hey, if you're an adult, if you're over 21, okay, let's be logical here. If you're over 30
Right.
and you decide to do that, hey,
That's on you.
it's on you, you're on your own.
Right.
But when you take a child who's
Yeah.
6 years old or 10 years old or even 15 years
Oh, yeah.
old,
Yeah.
most children go through stages
Mhm.
where they hear all of this garbage and they start wondering.
Mhm.
That's part of maturing.
And now because of social media, it's even more so in their face because they're
Exactly.
staring at it, 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And they're like, okay,
Exactly.
well, if that's normal for them, that can be normal for me.
Or it should be normal.
Right, it
for
should
me.
be, when it's not. And you don't have parents teaching the Bible anymore
Exactly.
in homes. It's just not part of culture. And so we've received, as societally, the recompense of our error, of not sticking with the Bible, not keeping Bible and God in schools. We've taken all that out. We're replacing it with still faith-based stuff. It's not factual. It's all belief-based of all this stuff, yet they won't let us talk about this.
But they'll let you talk about it.
But you can have a pride flag in the room, but not a Christian flag.
Exactly.
And it's all faith-based. It's all belief-based stuff. I just finished a book called Use Your Jesus Voice. I just kind of got tired of it. And I wrote a book specifically to teachers or anyone in a public setting that wants to learn how to stand up for God without getting fired, kind of thing. I'm going to talk about it next month. I'm going to preach, I think, on the 11th and present some of that information. But it's what happened with Madeline O'Hare, who got Bibles and prayer out of school. Christians felt, I think we talked about this last week, that we were taught to not cause a scene, to not speak against it. If we speak against it, we're being ugly. Well, we just sat by and let that happen. Of course, I wasn't born at the moment, but I saw the results of that coming through school. I remember distinctly between 4th grade and 5th grade, all that went away. Now, all that passed in the 60s. And she flipped out at the moon landing because the astronauts quoted Genesis 1:1. And she tried to sue the government because they allowed those astronauts to read the Bible on national TV, and the judge ruled it as, oh, that's out of our jurisdiction because they're literally out of the atmosphere.
Actually, good for them.
Right,
You know?
that they stood up for them. But now it's getting to the point we've got to start saying something because it's becoming shoved down my throat as a public school teacher. That you've got to embrace this. Well, no, I don't have to embrace it. That's violating my beliefs.
They don't care about your beliefs.
But they don't care about the conservative beliefs at
No.
all. They just care about one side of this. And it's getting out of hand. Let's finish out the chapter here. I think we've got a couple of minutes. It says, verse 28, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, which tells us that they know better. And that, again, we talked about it last week. He'll talk about it in chapter 2. Inherently, we know the Word of God. We know the law of God because Romans 2:15 says that the law is written on our hearts through our conscience. We know what's right and wrong inherently because of how God has created every person. But it says that they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, so God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, and being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, like, what's that? Well, that's exactly what we're dealing with right now, the debate over male and female. I mean, it should be a very common sense topic. Even Jesus said, have you not read from the beginning that God made them male and female? For this cause, because of the way God designed this, a man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they two will become one flesh. Wherefore what God has joined together, let no man tear apart. I mean, even within that, Jesus said this was done so by design. Male and female are there for a reason. And now they're debating over the whole topic that doesn't even mean anything. Deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God. That's the whole atheistic movement. Despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. I even see that as transgender surgeries and all this stuff that they're doing. Disobedient to parents. And they've taken over to become the parents at this point, the kids have. Without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection. That's the whole transgender movement. Nothing about it is natural. It's all just sick, twisted perversion of the truth. Implacable, unmerciful, who knowing, this is a verse that pegs it, nails it right on the head. Who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, do not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do it. They know it's wrong. They know God's judgment is coming for them. But not only do they do them, but they do it with pleasure. They do it with pride. That's the whole basis of Pride Month. Be prideful in your choices, choosing to be you, who you feel you are.
So do they believe that they're not going to die one day and go to heaven and have to stand before God to be judged for this prideful thing they're doing?
They're going back to changing the truth of God into a lie, and they're now even on the governmental level, Biden's saying they're made in the image of God. I heard Pastor Cheryl Wednesdays talking about a few verses that the Pride group is posting, that they're misinterpreting the verse in support of the LGBTQ movement. And that they're saying the Bible actually embraces this and says that, and they're teaching that. Pete Buttigieg, who is a gay, he's now director of transportation or whatever, thinking about running for president.
Again.
They're calling him Preacher Pete. Pastor Pete is his kind of nickname, because he's constantly throwing Bible verses at people as a government official. But since it's in support of the gay movement and the LGBTQ movement, they're okay with it. And he's saying, well, we've just misinterpreted this all of these thousands of years. And this really means this. This is really in support of gays. This is really in support of trans. This is really in support. I mean, I've heard people go so far as to say, well, Jesus had long hair, therefore he was trans. And all this crazy stuff. He had long hair and a beard, therefore he was non-binary. And they're just making up stuff, changing the truth of God into a lie. So God's just like, okay, y'all go for it. See how it turns out for you. Basically is what has happened. And it's not going to end well. As verse 32 even says, they know the judgment of God is coming, but they're lying to themselves, they're lying to each other, and now they're shoving it down our kids' throats in public school and on the Disney Channel and all the rest of it. And if we don't stand up and say something about it, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Which I believe is just more evidence of we're getting close to the signs of the end of the world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's going to get worse before it gets better. God's going to come back, and it's all going to, resolve itself. And I could go on for another 30 minutes, but we're about out of time.
There-
So
it's
I'm
gonna-
going to go ahead.
Never mind, I lost my train of thought.
Okay. Well, we'll see y'all next week as we get into chapter 2. And thank y'all for joining today. We'll see you next week.